Hi, today we're going to be building Super Agent. We're going to be building it in such a way that it's going to be much easier for you to set up. Now, these are the things that you need to understand. This is you here, and what we're going to be achieving today is you'll be interacting with an agent. Think of an agent as a contractor who handles your request. The contractor could be a specialist, could be someone who is specialized in a particular task, tasks such as code review, a software engineer, or a marketer. And an agent basically has a file which they depends on, and that is .md. Think of .md file as an agent. In fact, a .md file is basically an agent. Those are the instructions that need to be passed to the agent. And then all you have to do is just wait until you get the result. I would like to explain a clean flow. A clean flow is what you need to understand when you are building your agent. But before I dive into a clean flow, I want you to understand that most of the time where you interact with ChatGPT, you basically prompt every time and it handles your request. Every file you read pulls into the chat and stays in the session. New session, new context. An example of that is this. If you ask ChatGPT, what is happening in the world of technology today? What happens is the entire response stays in this session. To create a new session, whatever conversation you're having, it stays in this session. And guess what? As the session continues to expand, it tends to lose context. If you come again tomorrow, you would like to have a different conversation, the whole context is gone. That is why you need to understand building a clean flow. Building a clean flow, it allows you to read from a file, update the context on its own, and you have a cleaner response. Now imagine you having separate a file that is basically a guide on every single thing that needs to be done. Now, the next thing we need to focus on is building 5 super agents. To build 5 super agents, you need to understand what needs to be done. Now, this is your team. You are the CEO of your company or of your organization. Now you're about to assemble 5 different sub agents. This sub agent, they're going to be termed super agent. The first one is a research agent who is going to be handling all the research that are needed. And the next one is a software engineer. This is going to be a sub agent that will be handling all the software requests. The third one is going to be a code reviewer who is going to be handling the code that is written by the software engineer. The next one is going to be a QA engineer. The QA engineer is going to review the code that was written by a software engineer that has also already been code reviewed. Also, the research has been done. The marketing engineer is going to be the person who is going to be handling the announcement. So this is going to be your super team and your super agent or sub agent that you're going to be assembling in this course. The next one is the agent overview. What is an agent? To create an agent, an agent is basically a file, and in the file there's going to be a brain and there's going to be an instruction. The upper section of the file is going to be the brain, while the lower section of the file is going to be the instruction that needs to be passed into the agent. Now, how do you structure your agent? To structure your agent, you need to create .md file. So .md file is going to be at the top, is going to be the name of your agent. The name of your agent you could decide to call it research engineer, or you could decide to call it Elias, or you could call it John or James. Then the next one is the description. The description and the personality of the agent goes into this section. Then followed by tools. The tools your agent needs to get the job done. Now, remember what I said? That section is basically the brain, and the next section is going to be the instruction. Now, the instruction goes here, which is the brain of your agent. Now, you need to know how to instruct like a CEO. As a CEO, you're going to have CEO agent, and that CEO agent, that is where you're going to be prompting your agent to do things that need to get done. Now, this instruction, as you can see, is going to be, we need to add user identification to our app that shows the user info at the top, plan it, implement it, review it, test it, and write an announcement. This is going to be the instruction the CEO is going to be passing to the agent. So we need to have a CEO agent. Then once this has been sent, the research agent get kicked off. The software engineer agent will get kicked off, the code reviewer, QA engineer, and the marketing agent. Now, before we dive into the actual setting up the CEO agent and the respective agent, you need to understand, picture this as a human. Now, imagine a human that actually wants to get a job in a company, and let's call this human James. James has a resume and James has a job description. How does it translate to equivalent of an agent? The resume that the human has is basically the brain. It provides the name of the person, the skills the person has, and also the permission that the person could have. Also, the job responsibility. This is basically the instruction that the agent needs to have, and such as you are an agent, your task is to do X, Y, Z. That is where that goes. Now, the next thing is building your agent. To build your agent, you need to bring up your VS Code. Once you bring up your VS Code, you're going to see something like this. I already have some information here already set up. Now, let me do some explanation here. Now, as you can see here, we have ceo.md file, we have code reviewer.agent.md, and you have marketing team agent.md, and your QA engineer, your research engineer, software engineer.agent.md file. Now, one thing you need to understand is these files are currently sitting on this environment. To make them act as an agent, you need to create them. Then the first thing you need to do is to create an agent. You right click here, you create a new folder, you call the folder .agent. Now you've instantiated an agent's identifier in your VS Code. And then all these files, if you have a copy of these files, you can copy them and put them inside the .agent file. Now you've instantiated an agent. Now this is going to be the CEO agent, and the name here is CEO. Description says the master orchestrator agent used when planning, coordinating, or delegating complex tasks across engineering, QA, research, and marketing. Break down high-level goals and route work to the right sub-agents. And the tools that it has, it can read, search, edit agents, and also implement to-do. The model that is going to be doing is going to be Cloud Sonnet 4.5 Copilot. The argument int is describe the high-level goal or initiate to coordinate. Now, the agents that you can interact with are software engineer, code reviewer, QA engineer, research engineer, marketing team. Then, remember what I said? This section here is basically the what? The brain, as mentioned here. Now, the next bit is going to be the instruction. Remember that section is the brain. The next part is the instruction piece. Now, this is going to be the instruction for the CEO, which says you are the CEO, the master orchestrator, responsible for aligning teams, setting direction, and delegating execution to specialized sub-agents. Remember, delegating execution to specialized sub-agent. You think strategically and act decisively. Your responsibility is basically to understand high-level goals, decompose it into a concrete work stream, delegate each work stream to appropriate sub-agents, synthesize results from all sub-agents into a unified coherent output, resolve conflict or misalignment between teams. Delegation model. These are the delegation model. Anything related to feature alignment, architecture, design, system design, assign it to the software engineer. Anything related to the quality code, best practices, pull request, review, assign it to the code reviewer. Anything related to the testing strategy, bug validation, quality gates, assign it to the QA engineer. Technical research, feasibility, competitive analysis, assign it to the research engineer. Then for the positioning, messaging, go-to-market, campaign, assign it to the marketing team. As you can see, this is a delegation model. If you decide to, you can also build on this as well. Approach. You can clarify the objective, ask if the goal is ambiguous. Build a task plan using the goal to-do list. Delegate in parallel when work streams are independent. Sequentially when there are dependencies. Collect and review each sub-agent's output. Synthesize a final executive summary. or deliverable for the user. Now, basically, it goes on and on. The goal here is basically to pass the instruction to the CEO. So, as a person, if you're the CEO of a company or you're a manager of a company, if you want to create a sub agent, all your responsibilities, you have to define it, and then also you have to how to define who you in your team you need to reach out to, and your approach, your day-to-day activities, and then some constraints to your agent. Constraint is very essential to prevent your agent in going rogue, such as do not implement code yourself, delegate to the software engineer. As a CEO, which is the CEO agent, is not meant to be writing code. So you need to delegate it to who? To the software engineer. The next one is do not write marketing copy yourself. Delegate to who? The marketing team. Do not conduct deep research yourself. Delegate to the research engineer. Only make final decision and synthesize across the team. So these are the hard constraints, which is also called guardrail, that is being passed to the CEO agent. The output format, this is the output format. Provide a structured summary with objectives, team output, the next steps. So these are the information that need to be passed to the CEO agent. Now let's do a quick overview of the code reviewer agent. This is the code reviewer agent. You can see that the tools that you have access to, it basically reads and it search. That's it. It doesn't have any other tool. It doesn't have any, if you compare that to the tools that the CEO has, read, search, edit, agent, and to do. Here, you can streamline the access. Also, the name of the code reviewer here is code reviewer. You can give it a name. You can decide to call it John, Sarah, or Tom. And also, you can also give it a description. User invocable is a true. The argument int is point to the files or code change to review. Then it also has its own responsibilities here, as you can see. Then marketing team also have its own instruction. The name is marketing team, and these are the tools. And you can also see the core marketing framework and responsibilities. Once again, this is the brain. These are the instructions. The next one is a QA engineer. This is a QA engineer agent, and this is the brain of the QA engineer agent, and these are the instructions of the QA engineer agent. And also the testing taxonomy you need to be aware of is you need to perform unit testing, integration testing, end-to-end, regression, edge case, security. As you can see, this is the approach, and also these are the constraints, which includes do not implement feature code, only testing code. Do not skip edge cases or assume the happy path is sufficient. Do not approve a feature with failing tests or zero coverage on critical parts. And you could also add on and on and on. It depends on what your company wants or what your project needs. Also, the test plan. Also, these are the happy parts. You could also describe some happy parts that the QA engineer agent need to adhere to. The research engineer also follow the same approach, where at the top we have the brain, at the bottom we have the instruction, as mentioned earlier. Here, the brain and the instruction. It is very essential for you to make the instruction to be extremely verbose. And then also software engineer, and this is a software engineer right here. And here you can see this is the brain, and these are the this is the brain, and these are the instructions. And also the constraints: do not over engineer, only add what is asked or clearly necessary, and do not add unnecessary comments, docstring or subtraction or abstraction. Do not add error handling for scenarios that cannot happen. Only write code, do not review or test it. Hand off to the code reviewer or QA engineer. As you can see, this flow is completely different from if you're using ChatGPT as a form of conversation. The ChatGPT just gives you the output based on your question, but an agent could actually have a brain and a set of instructions. But if you're using ChatGPT, there won't be any of that. Now, this is how you create super agent.